as a spiritual business owner, what's the one balance you need to have if you're to find a deep level of success online and also a deep level of fulfillment within yourself? Well, this is the difference between mastering the masculine, more planning, structure, action items, all these things that for a divine masculine, and also a divine feminine with remaining presence, with having flow, with having creativity and intuition. So have you found yourself in the past being overdeveloped in one of these areas? Have you found yourself with an overdeveloped masculine? Maybe you're doing this hard work hustle, you're planning everything and you're doing it from a place of control where you can't allow things to also flow. Or maybe you're just always acting from flow or intuition, or just going about by the seat of your pants building a business, and you don't actually have the structure and planning that your business needs for its growth. This is why I invited Chris McCann, because he has not only a lot of expertise in business when it comes to sales for tech companies, but also he has a very spiritual perspective on life. His tech company that he is the number 2 at is just this close to becoming unicorn status. And so he's in charge of a team, but he also has a very unique spiritual lens, which with business flows through. And he also helps leaders really develop their heart and soul and spirit when it comes to business. So mastering this masculine, feminine, or this planning and presence is what we're talking about here. So what you can learn here is, 1, what is that main factor? What's the key factor for you in understanding how to have this balance? 2, what are a series of questions that you can ask yourself every single day to know that you're progressing and growing and expanding at a level you know you want? And 3, what to do when you catch yourself over serving or attached to outcomes? What do you do there? So I'll put all the links to connect with Chris below. Add him to your network. Your business will thank you for it. And of course, it's here and in the Serving Circle on Facebook, where you heighten the consciousness of the planet through the success of your spiritual business. So if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, be sure to subscribe, support the content. And of course, I'll see you in the Serving Circle on Facebook, where you can start collaborating with your soul tribe. Let's dive in. Welcome back, one and all, to the Awaken Your Business podcast. Chris McCann here. I think this topic is going to help anyone who's a spiritual entrepreneur who has top of mind that they know they need a plan, they know they need a direction, they know they need a mission. However, they need to also stay present. And many calls have gone on with me and my clients are saying, well, how do I plan? How do I set goals? How do I go after a purpose-led business while harmonizing the masculine strategies, go after it, plan it, make sure it's executed, while also staying present, being intuitive, loving the life you have, not being too attached to the outcomes in terms of your self-worth and levels of internal safety. So this is why Chris McCann's here. He's the absolute expert when it comes to conscious leadership and doing something that is your soul's purpose. But Chris, first of all, welcome. How you doing?
Tyson, I'm well. Thanks for making time this morning to connect. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, it's morning here, definitely not morning there. But we'd love to hear about your story. I mean, I've read up about you, everything you've been doing. It's super impressive, and it's kind of the life that people know they need to live and the lessons they know they need to learn. But going, guns blazing, learning about the work ethic, learning about how to go about, setting goals, making it happen, but then also referring back to more of a spiritual path and more of your heart, where you're being led, where you're being guided for the purpose of this planet. So give us an understanding on your story of how you went from there to where you are now.
As you're describing all of that, and I feel like I'm really just an idiot in recovery.
Nice. I'll take it.
Right. And my wife and I were catching up this afternoon, and we were sitting out in the front, eating salads and watching the world go by, and our dog was laying at our feet, and someone came to mind, that used to watch our 14-year-old, and this person was a yoga instructor. I actually ran into her, a few times, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just in the spirituality circuit here in Santa Monica, and she was at a transcendental meditation training that I had gone to, and her headline on her Instagram profile had changed, and it said, "I know the way," which instantly made me recoil. And a lovely person, but it's like, if anyone tells you that they know the way, run in the opposite direction. And I'm sure there's a Buddha reference there as well. Um, I've Today, my responsibilities are running sales for a content management platform that's based out of Austin, Texas. And so I have the opportunity to lead a team of sales folks, and I have cross departmental responsibilities as well. We are this close to unicorn status if we stack another good quarter in there. And it's not lost on me how privileged I am to be able to lead and to experiment and to play as I learn more about myself, even at the ripe young age of 49. And I realize I don't know much of anything. There are some things that I know, and we can talk about those, on the podcast. But prior to this, and I work it backwards, my new boss, he's been with us for 6 months, and he's like, "Chris, I get a sense that you've reinvented yourself multiple times over the last 20 years." So today, I lead sales teams and cover the Americas. But yesterday I was a bartender, so to speak. And, I've had this really unique, a really unique set of opportunities to step into something by declaring it to be true and then figuring it out in the back end. And that's not entirely different from where I am today. So having worked my way up from a single parent when I was 22, and I had two boys at that age, and was just trying to figure out how to put diapers on kids, nappies, or how to buy food and pay for gas, etc., to now where we are able to live a certain way. It's not lost on me how lucky I've been to have mentors, coaches, teachers, masters, and I've learned things by getting kicked in the face, and also learned things because people would stop and saw something in myself that perhaps I didn't recognize at the time. And so with this new boss that I have, who's 5 years my senior, but has led revenue for multiple startups and has led them to successful exits, I really quickly ascertained that there's a lot between what he knows and what I don't. And I never went to college. Anything that I've picked up has been self-taught or self-learned by reading or by accumulating a series of experiences. My company, when I had reached out, I was like, I need a mentor. I can't burden Todd, who's busy, creating this juggernaut. And I can't burden him with trying to fill this gap between what I know today and what the organization needs, and then being the best number two that he's ever had. That's my goal. So I reached out to our head of HR and was like, I need some help. Which, me asking for help doesn't always come naturally, because the typical American style is to figure it out on your own. Cowboy up, or put the spurs in the ground. And so they had reached out to a few people in their network and introduced me to this woman who actually lives here in Los Angeles, who was a former CIO for a technology firm. And what she's been able to help me do just in 2 phone calls, because yes, I do, I don't want, coaching is maybe not the right word, but I love to have conversations with people and help them remember or discover their true nature and to just live slightly better than they had before. And now I have this individual that my company is sponsoring who is allowing for me to perceive things as a CXO would do in an organization. So a lot of this growth or this opportunity they have in front of me from a professional perspective is because I finally raised my hand at 49 years old and said, I need help. I don't know what I don't know, but I know that there's something there that I don't know. And I need someone with a fresh set of eyes to come in and help me identify how I can be a more effective leader, how I can manage managers, how I can plan, effectively. And as you know, Tyson, we've had conversations before this. We as people who have awakened to a different sense of what reality is. And a lot of that is being attuned to being present in a very certain way. I'm very well compensated because of my ability to look back, because of my ability to look forward, which has nothing to do, at least, from at the surface level, of actually being tuned in and being present and going from breath to breath. That's not necessarily the most effective way to scale a sales team globally. And so that's a lot of what Kim is helping me with, from a coaching perspective as a former CIO, is, Chris, where does the self-doubt come from? Why is it that you always doubt your abilities to lead when, look, you have a certain station in life? And so self-doubt has been an interesting exploration for me as well, not just in the last couple of weeks, but over time, because this constant, okay, I have a huge nut I've got to hit in terms of income, being able to put my kids through college, et cetera. How do I figure this out? That self-doubt, that level of inspiration and motivation got me to a certain place in life. But I don't feel like that's going to serve me any longer. And it's having an understanding of what it is that makes us unique as spiritual divine beings, in addition to being professional and being able to have a foot in both worlds. So I know I covered a lot of ground there in a couple of minutes.
That's
But
cool.
was there anything there that stood out that you want to dive deeper on?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm curious about is, as you evolved in becoming, you know, becoming an overachiever and starting to have a lot of things, when you have that sort of go 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 mentality. What I'm curious about, when you started studying more of the spiritual traditions and texts and having certain teachers in your life, was there anything in particular that really hooked you to say, this is something I need to study more? There must be more to life that allows a deeper level of purpose, a deeper level of connectedness or flow of love, whatever it may be. Was there any particular spiritual text or teacher or mentor that hooked you with the spiritual lens of life?
What comes to mind is, and I'm going to go back in time, this is 49, probably 15 or 16 years ago. And I was with my son in a bookstore. We used to have bookstores back then. And so I was looking to kill some time. And I walked in, and there's this huge display in front of me with Donald Walsh's Conversations with God. And you couldn't miss it. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the book, but perhaps some of the folks in your audience are. I opened it up and I couldn't put it down. I sat there for 3.5 hours and just devoured that book. And of course, I ended up purchasing it. But his story, and he, had a few different kids, a couple of different relationships, found himself living in a tent, which wasn't entirely dissimilar from my experience at that point, and just, couch surfing and trying to just figure out why things were broken. And he had started, writing, why is my life not working? And then all of a sudden he started to get answers back. And I wanted that level of a relationship with God or source or a higher self or the creator or spirit, whatever it might be. And that book for me at least opened up the possibility that you can have a dialogue with a higher intelligence that will help you simplify and not overcomplicate or steampunk your own life. So that book for me was very transformational. Um, and there have been other readings and books. My teacher and mentor and friend, Dr. Carlos Warder, he's a living master. He just turned 75 last weekend. We're down there with him. And I had, probably like many folks in your audience, had discovered that I have these abilities, or that we have these abilities to receive information or receive intelligence or to channel or to have some sort of psychic medium capabilities. And so I had oversubscribed to that maybe 5 years ago. And all I wanted to do was be this really powerful healer. I wanted to take these abilities to intuit and to receive information and share them. And I was conflicted because I had very well-paying job, running sales teams for tech startup companies, but I really had no interest in doing that. I just wanted to go do this. I just wanted to be able to grab my crystals, put on some Palo Santo, and be able to receive information. And for as much as I was able to see what that looks like, whether it's books or me being on stage, et cetera, I had created this linear understanding of what that road was going to look like, Tyson. And then had this conversation maybe 2 years ago with a friend of mine. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you have this job, you have this ability to work with all of these people, these private equity firms, these VC firms, your investors, and you have cross-departmental responsibility. And he's like, that's your marketplace. It's where you are right now. And that gave me at least a sense of it being possible to where you can have a foot in both worlds without having to oversubscribe to one or the other. You can still be I don't want to use the term awakened, but you can still be someone and be a certain way that is present, aware, service minded, and still able to operate in this corporate world. There's a CEO for Mitsubishi at one point is also a Zen Buddhist monk. And so he would take off for, I think, 2 months out of the year to go train other monks. So me taking that pressure off of myself and having to be a certain way, and it's really easy to do here in Los Angeles, is to dress a certain way, put on the robes, wear all white, throw some crystals around your neck, and talk about the divine feminine and masculine all day long. It's like, no, that's not it. But I can help this organization, and I can help other organizations stay aligned with a purpose or a mission and wanting to be something other than just a technology firm that has a successful exit. So those two instances are what stand out. First book being Neil Donald Walsh and his ability to have a conversation, whether it was imagination or receiving something from a higher power. And then having a friend just point out, like, dude, you're already doing it. You're in the marketplace and you have an opportunity to have a global reach just by operating the way that you do. And that took a lot of pressure off.
That's powerful. Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool to have that flexibility of perception to say, hey, maybe I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I don't need to bold all my momentum down, but add in the flavor of what I'm learning now into the environment that I find myself in.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's so important, like you said, with the masculine, feminine energies, we both know, like everyone knows that both exist within us, and it's finding the balance that serves us in a way where that we feel the way we feel called to live, and also the way that we feel called to serve. Like, so it's about having it's about mastering these internal energies to a point where we can live and express an expansive life that where we contribute what we're here to contribute, share deeper levels of love, consistently grow, and allow that energy to expand. So I love your insights. If you were to mentor, coach, give some sort of advice to to a solopreneur who is what they would call spiritually awakened and advancing in that area, how is it that they master the skills of business and the skills of developing their spirituality with this planning while also being present? What are some what's some tips or advice or guidance you have there if someone's trying to master that area of their life?
Values. Values, not a conversation I would have been able to have 20 years ago. There's, when we're really clear on what our value or values are as a human being, everything else can fall in lockstep. What, give me an example. What is a value or a couple of values, Tyson, that you have, that
Well,
you hold?
the things that I love focusing towards, especially once I went through, Tony Robbins training, going to all his in-person events, 5 years ago, um, understanding the six human needs and what he teaches, I started saying, okay, how do I design my life where I develop deeper levels of love, deeper
Mhm.
levels of growth, and deeper levels of contribution? And if I can start to value those deeper, if I can start to value those at the forefront, then I know I'll have the ability to push past any insecurities, fears, doubts, judgments, those sort of
Mhm.
things. So the forefront of my mind of values is deeper levels of love, deeper levels of growth, deeper levels of contribution.
Mhm.
They sort of kind of more or less seem to be running my life at the moment.
Excellent. And those can be the common denominators when it comes to the more three-dimensional aspects of a career, a professional career, whether that's in a corporate world or if someone is stepping fully into spirituality and helping people find their own way. There's, I've been able to distill my values down to one, and that's life. Does that mean I'm pro-life in a political way? No, but life, that essence, the isness of what makes this experience so powerful is what drives my decision making and what drives how I operate. And there are moments and times where I get a little bit sidetracked on that. And as a man, it's not intuitive for me, or it hasn't been intuitive for me to be able to feel when I'm on purpose and when I'm aligned with my values. I had a psychotherapist when I first moved here, and I don't know if you're familiar with the show Billions, but on Billions, they had someone there that was coaching, and it was coaching a bunch of traders, right? So if something went sideways, they go into Wendy's office, she would fix them up, put them back on the field, or put them back on the court, and they'd be off making money. And I wanted someone like that in my life. I was dealing with a difficult work situation at the time. And she had asked me, God bless her, like, well, how do you feel? And I could not articulate feeling. Are you sad? I'm like, and I would just get like stage fright in front of this therapist that I was paying. And over time, I've been able to, you had mentioned this instrument, and I'm perhaps paraphrasing, but when we think of ourselves and understand ourselves as, energetic beings, right, from a quantum physics perspective, and when there's like David Bohm talks about, the implicate order and the explicate order, that which is all possibilities and potentiality, compared to the explicate, which is what's made material by observing. And then putting up our antenna and being able to discern, like, where in my body do I actually feel that particular value and what's important to me? And what I've been able to develop, and it's different for everyone. And like, where's your center? Where do you actually feel your center of power? And for me, it's in my root chakra. It's down there, right, in my groin area. And so when I sit, or if, because I have ADHD, it wasn't diagnosed, now it's diagnosed, and I always have this propensity to fill up quiet spaces with noise and to get my thoughts out. Well, I'll take a moment, and sometimes it feels like 20 minutes, and it's probably no more than 2 seconds, and just notice where in my body I'm feeling a certain situation, and then my response to it. And so, if my value then is life and being pro life, And I can tune that into my balls, and then noticing where it is, coming back to, balancing the masculine with the feminine. When I'm receiving, I get it on my right side. And so I'll feel oftentimes my right leg, or certainly my hand, starts tingling. And then the giving aspect of it comes out of my left side. And this is something I'm able to notice as I've spent more and more time with intention and noticing how and where things show up and how they feel. So if it shows up for me on the right side and it's there on the left side, when we've gone to classic sales training, Tyson, or classic business training, and perhaps it was a Dale Carnegie book, but it was very transactional, on that if you help enough people get what they want, then you're going to get what you need. And to me, that feels if this, then that. What I've learned for myself is that the only way to be able to receive, it's like if I want more money or I want a better relationship, is just to give and to empty the tank. You can't take more in terms of material sense or an energetic sense, if you're actually not in concert, in cooperation and communion with that giving and receiving, the feminine and the masculine, or the masculine and the feminine. And like that, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, but it's like, if that is always there and always happening, and what has been missing then has been attention or intention, and I drop the linearity of if this, then that, and then things constantly surprise me. I had, so it's my value is life. And I have a tendency to be this like hermetic monk, right? It's like a hole up here in my office and not necessarily engage with the world. Yet when I go outside or I go to a dinner party and I'm around people and I'm showing up and we're looking, like I make it a point to look left eye to left eye and ask them how they are, and give people space if they so choose to be seen, if they choose to be heard, if they want to share. Like that energizes me, and I can bring that home. And then I know that if I'm creating that space for them to be seen and be heard, I'm also doing the same for myself and connecting people, or connecting with people, in a real, authentic, and true way. And so if something happens from a business perspective where one of my team members is dealing with something and they're like, Chris, I need you to help me put out this fire, the natural instinct for Chris is to go into reactive mode. What's a learned behavior now is just take a step back, make sure that I'm really clear on my value. We're pro-life, we're pro-experience, and we're pro-evolution and growing and expansion. And then understanding how things kind of fit in and not overcomplicating it. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah.
But does any of that resonate?
No, it definitely does. So, I mean, when someone's finding this blend, when someone's finding this perfect harmony with planning versus present, and how to find both, you use both of those in a way that is harmonizes their life. What you're saying is always be aware of your core value, and if you understand what value or values you live by and that matter most to you, you can get very, very present with recognizing where it resides in your body, where that value resides in your body, and connect with that before you start making decisions. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, well said. Nice and succinct. It requires a level of honesty and vulnerability with yourself. There's a question that we can ask, and the only way to really answer this in a way that's going to be helpful to us as individuals and to the people that we're around is to be really clear on who we are.
Mm.
And the question, and Meredith and I do this just about every night, is where did you betray yourself today? 80% of the time, there was a moment in that day where we betrayed our core value. or a knowing, right? And we can have really human reactions to, human experiences. But in incorporating this into my daily practice and Meredith incorporating this into her daily practice, it's facilitated this level of dialogue, not just with each other and holding each other accountable, right? To, what are my values? What is important to me? How do I want to operate in this world? And it forces a level of introspection, even on an hourly basis or a minute by minute basis, where it's like, oh, there goes Chris being Chris again. I can course correct. And it's not an exercise I could have done 15 or 20 years ago. But today, because I want to operate with as much honesty and integrity with myself and with the people that I'm connected with, that also encourages a level of humility. And humility is really knowing one's place in front of something bigger than yourself. And so as I'm describing this to you, it's like, okay, maybe I am an effective leader because of this radical self-inquiry and accountability and responsibility today that I didn't operate with before. And that's what I like to help people with. To me, this idea of work-life balance is a facade. And if it ever existed, it sure as hell doesn't exist anymore after the pandemic.
Mm.
It's all one and the same if you so choose it to be. And you can take any job, any mundane job, and find a sense of purpose and meaning in there. And that comes down to your values and the things that we inherently do well on an individual level.
Mm. That's awesome. And it there's some subtle reminders in there, that we're always being led. We're always having this level of, intuition, and we can use that no matter what we're doing, no matter how we're doing it. If it is a mundane job, if it is something that you recognize right now, hey, I'm being called to something else, like you can still in that moment be present to your value and live to your value in that way, where all of a sudden you start finding the harmony between life, between your life, between your work, and having that balance. And seeing it more as an integration rather than two things that are separate, where you're just trying to find a balance. I also don't believe necessarily in that work-life balance, because if they all thrive on each other if you can harmonize it in a way. So what advice would you give to someone who has the active goal? Let's say that they deeply value their own level of spiritual connection to themselves and to life. However, they're looking to build a business, whether they are a healer, a coach, a mentor, a spiritual practitioner of some kind, and health practitioner. If they are looking to build a business online, they're a solopreneur, and they're like, okay, I value the spiritual aspect of my life, but yes, I do need to set some business goals, execute some things with my divine masculine, while still using the true gifts of my divine feminine. Once they know their value, once they know that they can tap into their what they value most within their life, what does the execution look? Is there certain ways in which you harmonize the planning versus staying present? What does that look like in terms of the execution?
On a daily basis, or rather a nightly basis, this is a practice that I learned, 49, 30, probably 25 years ago. And I worked for someone who was a Polish immigrant. And I had a hard time understanding the value of this. And I worked with this company for 10 years as a technology recruiter. And the forced behavior was an hour before the day ends to start planning. And it's like, what are the three things I did well today? What are the three things that I didn't do well today? What do I need to get done tomorrow? And don't pick any more than 5 things. And begin to push them off into the important and urgent bucket, or where it's not important or not urgent and it doesn't need to be done. It doesn't have to be complicated, but just I carve out 45 minutes every afternoon to plan out my next day. And that requires a level of honesty and integrity. I'm not just filling this worksheet out because someone has asked me to work it out. I fill it out because it helps me stay dialed in to what needs to happen tomorrow and to not overcomplicate it. So, of course, I feel better with a checklist. But it's if I was going to connect with 3 people tomorrow, who is it going to be and why? And just serving my ass off, right? The one thing that I want to do is make sure that I empty the tank so that I'm able to receive and carve out that space. I don't want it to sound like a platitude or to sound trite, but if all you do is list out the 10 phone calls that you're going to make tomorrow, and I find it better for me to be able to write than to do this in a digital fashion. And then I'm operating and I'm keeping track on a weekly basis. If I said I was going to make 10 phone calls, whether it's through LinkedIn or people I used to work with before, how many did I make? How many did I not make? And of the ones that I didn't make, why? And it gives me an understanding of, well, maybe I got distracted, or something happened with a dog and I took the dog for 2 walks, or I thought it was more productive for me to clean my kitchen counter. Picking 3 things that you want to get done that next day, and then reflecting on the 3 things that you had actually wanted to get done that day, and figure out where you are tracking versus what the desired state was. That's all you have to do. Now, if I'm growing a business and I've been working on this book for some time, and this I feel like it really is applicable across roles, responsibilities, solopreneurs, is to write the book that you wanted to read. And in doing that, I'm then not striving for something which is almost untenable because I perhaps can't picture it or imagine it. But I picked an age, like this is the book that I wanted to read when I was 13. And that's the book that I'm writing. And that has taken a lot of pressure off. And it's also given me a clarity on what that goal is. And it makes it much easier for me to produce in that way. And the same is true for my day job, right? And it's like, okay, I'm going to connect with three people tomorrow because I feel like I can add value to what they're experiencing and make those calls. And because sales is really a contact sport, I'm always surprised, like, wow, that phone call went well. I really wish that I had done this more often. And just appreciating, any sort of momentum that we are able to create and generate on our own, and to feel good about it. And don't beat yourself up if you don't hit, 1 or 2 or 3 of these goals. What's important is to understand why. Is there a pattern that I've seen over the course of a week in keeping this particular work journal where I'm allowing myself to get distracted from the work at hand? And that's where I feel like it doesn't have to be overly engineered or overly wrought, where we're setting these impossible goals. It's just picking 3 things is like the magic number, 3 things to reflect on.
That's beautiful, because it's kind of this, it's sort of like planning in a present way. It's sort of saying, okay, how can we plan by reviewing the day, taking the lessons and moving it forward into the next day so that you can consistently progressing, doing it with radical self-honesty, radical self-inquiry of saying, okay, not only am I going to focus on what went well and what I did, but what didn't go well, or what didn't I do, and why is that? So that you can sort of allow that knowledge to flow through to tomorrow and say, well, given all this, what am I going to do tomorrow? Let's prioritize those things so that when we have those priorities, we can sort of say, okay, this is my main focus. Given the lessons that I learned, this is what I'm going to do different. And then that radical self-honesty of why can help highlight some of those deep lessons that probably you're trying to avoid. If the radical self-honesty is, hey, I didn't listen to my values, or I didn't recognize the importance of this thing, or hey, I didn't have the courage to move forward with this conversation, or whatever it is, then jotting that down and having that top of mind for when you execute the action items the next day, no doubt it's like this. It's almost like an exaggerated way to evolve and consistently expand, because you're asking yourself these questions time and time and time again.
Yeah, and yes, is hopefully we're able in going through this process to see through the facade of pretense. The the crumbling away of what's not true, of untruth, has really helped me to understand, get a better understanding of who I am, how I operate, the things that get me excited, and the things I frankly just don't like doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with becoming better or being happier or even making more money. I just want to know what's true and what's true about me. And people seem to find that to be helpful. And the people that I work with and the people that work for me, the people that I work for, the people that I connect with. And if that's all I end up doing on the way to transitioning out this mortal coil, I'm okay with that. It's a life well lived.
Awesome. That's a good way to look at it. Because if you have, like, I always love thinking at the end of your life, what are you going to be most proud of looking back? And if you can live to your values and connect with people in that way, and just doing the best you can with providing more love for life, or like you say, being very pro life and making your decisions and actions best from that as possible, then you have the courage to go past the safety of the mind, or insecurities and fears and all those things that can kind of keep you in this little comfort box.
Mhm.
But if you look back on that and say, hey, these are all the mistakes I made, and I'm proud I made them, and the leaps the leaps that I took that made me learn here or evolve or get this win that I had no clue I was meant to receive,
Mhm.
you can look back on your life with a level of with an energy like, that's how I was meant to live, right? That's how I was meant to live.
Yes. Yeah. And just being amused, amused at how it all just happens. And I, just because today it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit, there's not a cloud in the sky, the ocean's 4 blocks away, my son's out playing with a bunch of friends, and my wife and I are going to have dinner with some other friends. It doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. And I've had moments where it hasn't always been sunny and 72. And my belief is that, because I'm really clear now on who I am, that no matter what the external experience is, it's all designed to teach. And it's something that I chose coming into this incarnation, to continue to evolve and expand. And, enlightenment is a destructive process. And I'm okay with that. Like, I want to know the truth and just serve my ass off as long as I'm here.
Awesome. So what would that look like if someone's building their business? Because we all know people can catch themselves in certain patterns of, one, over serving, or two,
Mhm.
setting business goals and having their worthiness be attached to those things. So any of those patterns that have you recognized in your life, or those that you help and mentor, and what advice would you give to someone who recognizes those patterns of attachment, for one? And let's just start there with someone who's attached to certain outcomes, whether it's their own inherent worthiness or safety, and they find that into the, attached to a particular outcome. What's some advice you would give there?
Not everyone deserves to be served by you.
Hmm.
Really important lesson for me to learn, and wanting to help and help and help, and then assume that it's transactional and I'm going to get a return on that in the form that I had assigned to it, whether it was $400 for an hour's worth of work, or a backyard filled with people that, want to experience, like, Chris McCann is the psychic medium. letting go of that and knowing that everyone has their own journey and being able to picture, if I live in my own universe up here, then so do you, and so do you, and so do you. And we all have our own bubble of self importance, if you will, self referent in that way. And just that level of awareness and humility in the grand scheme of things had removed any sort of attachment that I had had on, if I do this, then I get a certain result. But discernment, not but, and discernment has been paramount. There's an example of this is that I had received a phone call when I was traveling for work from this woman who lives here in Los Angeles. She's the heiress to a multimedia, a global multimedia company here in LA. And her voicemail to me was 15 minutes long. I'd never met her. She was referred to me by a friend. And all I kept thinking about, Tyson, was like, wow, like this could turn into a $25,000 coaching fee. And there's a lot of drama, a lot of histrionics attached to this. I talked to her a couple of times and I was like, well, wait a minute. This might actually be an experience of someone that I don't want to work with. And if all I kept thinking of was this fascination of being on her board of directors, right, and being on a private jet and flying to help coach her and doing all these things, it's like, yeah, no, that doesn't feel good to me. There's too much attachment into how that would appear and how it would feel. And so I politely declined to do work. That's not something I would have done 2 or 3 years ago. So just being able to tap into the discernment, and again, coming back and noticing where is that in my body and how I'm reacting to the situation was very, very important. I think that answered part of your question. So discernment is very important. Also, knowing that not everyone deserves to be served by you, nor the other side of that coin is, nor do you deserve to serve everyone. And we all have our own little matches in our own resonant field. And what works for me and a certain client may not work for my friend Cooper and one of his clients, and it may not work for Tyson and his. But amongst the 3 or 4 of us, right, there's likely going to be someone that would resonate and vibrate, at the right frequency level with that individual. And so knowing when there's also someone who's more capable of serving in a way where it feels like a stretch, or you get a little bit of like, say, not founder's disease, but where you feel like a fraud, or who am I to actually do this work? And listening to where that is in my body has helped me be able to stay on track and on purpose and not saying yes to everything.
I like it.
Don't have to say yes to everything. Yeah.
I like it. It's sort of just the having that discernment. You do need radical honesty, like you were saying before. Mm-hmm. The ego of the mind can be quite deceptive in that way, and just having the radical self-honesty that says, hey, I'm being attached to this outcome because of how I may be perceived, or because of how I may see, I may inherently feel more significant, more worthy, whatever it may be from this outcome. I noticed that in myself a lot, of how people would perceive me, and noticing that I think is the key.
Yeah. The question that I had learned to ask was, because we can receive so much information and so much intelligence out there, whether it's in like from media or whether it's our own intuitive abilities. And I would get fascinated with this phenomena. Not interested, but fascinated. It's like, oh, I just saw the world explode and all these extraterrestrials are out here doing this thing. And I would just ascribe myself to that certain way of operating and belief. And what I've learned is that not everything that comes in is meant to be acted upon. It's information and it's a different point of view. So what I ask when I find myself conflicted, or if I'm receiving something that is some sort of really interesting phenomena, I just ask, what's in this for me? What's meant for me? And that tends to remove a lot of the noise or the other attachments that I would find in a situation, and just drill down again back into, where do I feel this in my own body and my own experience.
Powerful stuff. So I've got a couple more questions, but before I get there, what what's one place or a couple places people can connect with you, find out more about you, reach out if this resonates and they're like, oh my god, I need a Chris in my life. Where is it they can connect with you?
Yeah, website's the easiest. It's my first name, last name .co. Chris McCann, CHRISMCCANN.co. And then CHRISMCCANN.co is also my Instagram. So between those two places, I tend to be pretty available.
Okay, beautiful. Chris, in summarizing this, in really helping people understand this planning versus present, this understanding their value, really moving forward in a way that is their life's purpose and being of service. What else do you think? What do you have any other pieces, tips of advice, questions for people listening that you think they need to digest and think about to sort of really start to execute on this topic?
The magic for me began when I had understood what common denominators existed for me from the time that I was a kid to today. I love to build. I love to create. I love data. I love coaching. I love leading. These are all things that I was doing when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And somehow, either that thread continued and carried on, or I remembered it, which is a true story. And I wanted to build a life. I wanted to build a career around the things that feel effortless to me.
Mm.
And that is exactly what I'm doing today, which is coaching, leading, building. There's a lot of data involved in my life. There's a lot of room for creativity. And I would highly recommend that if anyone feels a little bit off or something's not tracking in terms of being able to make money and live and exist, is to take a look at those things that got you excited when you were younger, where you felt alive and on purpose, where maybe time would disappear and you find yourself in that flow state, which I'd sit in my basement writing when I was a kid. And if you can find or isolate two, three, four, five of those adjectives, and then you can look for ways to incorporate those into your work, like that is very, very powerful, because it's not that that's the marketplace or that's the marketplace. This is the marketplace.
Mm.
When we can bring in those things that feel effortless, magic happens, living happens, life happens.
That's cool. Don't you just find that things start to happen in flow and more harmony? That may include lessons, but when you're doing the things that feel effortless, that 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 to me seems you've tapped into something. You've tapped into some magic there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, thank God, all of them, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just takes the pressure off, and it's like it doesn't have to be that hard where you're going against the grain, and it's more like qigong, if you will, and you're in the flow of how things are really working,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be effortless. It doesn't mean it's always easy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Life is hard, but it can be effortless.
Mm. I like it. It's sort of like the effortless action the Tao Te Ching talks about a lot. As soon as you tap into that sort of that flow of, oh, this is sort of what I'm meant to be doing, and this feels
Yes.
like it's flowing through me, all of a
Mhm.
sudden you tap into this, you sort of tap into this energy of just like, I now know whatever happens is meant to happen. Whether it's the lessons, the wins, the collaboration with life, it sort of happens more and more in flow the more you ask
Yes.
that.
Yes. And it just keeps getting better if you let it.
That's the that's that's probably the hardest thing is letting it. You know,
Right.
I actually had this big story that many people also share, and that was, hey Tice, you need to go and design your work life, because what we need to do is do the thing that we don't want to do, so you can get the resources to then go do the thing that you want to do. And that's just how I grew up thinking, until I questioned that and said, hey, what if the thing that I am called to do I actually enjoy? And every now and then I catch this pattern that says, no, 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 it's meant to be hard, and you're meant to go through unnecessary pain so that you can do the thing that you want to do, or so that you can go and have the time or money to have some fun. And I'm like, it comes up all the time, and I'm questioning myself all the time. It says, no, no, no. What if this was also fun? What if this was also in flow? What if this was also on purpose, and it was flowing through you in this effortless action?
Mhm.
What would that look like, and how would you design your life because of it? And that's sort of why I build the community of the serving circle that incorporates everything I just love talking about, I love doing. It feels fun, it feels effortless, and of course, I'm blessed to be able to coach full time. This is it's just the journey that we're all on, of how to find that harmony of what am I here to do, how do I go about it where I'm living my values and having the courage to make those decisions that may go against what society or my mind, thinks should be in place.
That's right.
Powerful stuff,
It's,
eh?
yeah, absolutely. And thanks for sharing that with me. Sometimes I just laugh at, like, wow, like I really can overcomplicate things. Right. It's just, they're wonderful reminders on just, keeping things simple and just being present.
That's it. That's it. Anything else you feel called to share while you're on here, while you've got the stage?
I'm just really grateful that we carved out some time to do this. I love having these types of conversations, and I'm here to serve and be
Beautiful.
served.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, many people get some takeaways from this call. Anyone who's listening, reach out to Chris, add him to your network. It's invaluable to have someone with his experience and knowledge and wisdom in your network, in your life. Definitely reach out on the website or Instagram. We'll put the links below. Chris, all I have to say, thanks for being here. Any other way I can serve or help, just let me know, okay?
Ditto. Appreciate the
Awesome.
time, Tyson. Thanks for all the work you do.
Thanks, mate.